Alexandria Ocasio Smollett has just released a statement, which I was going to stay out of originally because this is all a distraction from the major issues of what Congress is actually trying to do behind the scenes as it pertains to the Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act of 2021. I'm going to do another video on that later, so stay tuned. And if you're not already subscribed, go ahead and smash that subscribe button so you can get notified of my latest content, as well as your subscriptions go a long way with helping to support independent content, independent voices that are challenging the narrative and holding our politicians and media accountable for what's going on. And it also helps fight the algorithm because, as we know, big tech censorship is on right now in a massive way, trying to suppress any alternative voices. We already have CNN also putting pressure on YouTube and Facebook to suppress any alternative sources of information and influencers, distracting them from the mainstream legacy media. And there's a lot in the algorithm that will suppress anything other than legacy media. So your subscription goes a long way. Smash that like button as well as comment on this video. I want to know your thoughts. So I will do another video on the Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act of 2021. But I feel as though a lot of these stories that are coming out, whether it be is Ilhan Omar going to be on this committee, or is Liz Cheney going to be removed from that committee, and now AOC coming out with this story, has not only been a big distraction from what they're actually doing behind the scenes to really suppress and take away our rights, but also to try to control the narrative, demonize one side as well, and draw sympathy, and also just to draw attention and put spotlight on herself. From a national situation, now all of a sudden becomes about AOC. I love how that happens. But initially I was going to stay away from it, not just because I thought it was going to be a distraction from what those in Congress are actually doing that is even more terrifying. But at the same time, the initial story broke. She did a little video on Instagram talking about her harrowing tale of her experience on January the 6th when the Capitol building was under siege by these white supremacist Trump supporters. She did reveal that she was also a survivor of sexual assault, whatever that is. She never went into any great detail of what the assault was. That definition can vary, but even if we take her at her word and admit, okay, she was traumatized years ago by some event, and so she's holding on to that trauma, and an event like what happened on January 6th may have triggered it, whether it was rational or irrational, but based upon previous triggers. She's also 5'6", 126 pounds soaking wet maybe, and what may trigger her and frighten her is going to be a hell of a lot different than someone like myself who's about 6'2", 200 plus pounds. And so I may look at it ridiculous as like, you really were intimidated by a bunch of people who didn't even have weapons, most of which didn't even know why they were there, and you think your life is in danger. I may think it's petty and silly, but she might not. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give her that. But then come to find out, she was never even in the Capitol building to begin with. She may not have said a direct lie, but she definitely omitted a lot of truths to allow the narrative amongst the population to then falsely assume that she was there in the Capitol building, that her office was located there. Just because the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi's office, is there and was actually raided, we, I guess, as a population, never fully fact check to find out where are all of these members of Congress actually located, where are their offices. We just probably assume they all have offices in the main Capitol building. Lo and behold, she's actually in the Cannon building, which is located several buildings away, practically literally across the street, far away from what was actually transpiring. So the story she initially put out, she actually said a couple of conflicting tales. One of which she initially said, oh, I was going to go to the evacuation point, or the evacuation point, but I didn't want to because the Republicans were out to kill me, or I was afraid of what they were going to do. And then in another story she gives, she actually did wind up going after being led by a security officer. So the most recent story she put on and told on her Instagram, in addition to revealing that she may have been a survivor of some form of sexual assault, was that she hid in her office. Mind you, in that same recount, she mentions that this siege was so terrifying that she had to hide in a subset room of her office. Meanwhile, her staffers are out in the hallway outside her door. So the story already raised some flags because it's so terrifying of an event that yes, you have to hide, but you'll sacrifice your staffers to hold guard for you. What were they going to do? And you'll sacrifice them as opposed to them hunkering down. And she's barricading herself against this door where she's hearing, where is she? Where is she? Where is she? Again, making us assume that there were people in the Cannon building. But again, she had us thinking she was in the Capitol building. So she had, was making us believe she had reason to believe that the building she was in was under siege and she's hiding. When in reality, it turned out to be a security officer who was just trying to find her. And then she turns this into an anti-cop BLM montage where she's saying, well, then I found out it was a cop, but I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel right. His vibe didn't feel good, which might be because you weren't at the extraction point where you were supposed to be. You weren't following protocol. So he's having to find you to take you to the place where you were supposed to be headed to. And then there was just a lot going on. So of course he's got a lot on his mind. He's not going to be chipper, but I digress. As she's telling this story, people again just took at face value, okay, maybe her office is in the Capitol building. Come to find out, again, she's in the Cannon building. So at no point was her life in any kind of danger, and yet she has been milking this for the last 3+ weeks of stating that how she was almost killed, how Ted Cruz, who was trying to reach out in an olive branch of support for a cause that she thought was worthy, said, I don't work with people who try to have me killed. So she was milking this for weeks about how she was in danger, how she was almost killed. Again, give her a pass when we assume she was in the building, and we're not going to, or at least I wasn't going to come at her, because again, how she felt was how she may have felt if she was actually in that building, whether it was a legit or not. Because honestly, most of those people who broke into the Capitol building were not violent. They didn't even really know what was going on. Her whole story was a hoax to generate sympathy for her, allow her to have the moral high ground against her political opponents. It feels like this has become now reality TV politics, allowing her to demonize another side and also gin up enough anger and support so that when things like the Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act gets released, people will be like, yeah, we definitely need it. We need to protect our congressmen and women. And it's all baloney. And another thing I want to say on the whole Capitol riot thing that's starting to come out. So Officer Brian Sicknick, I believe his name was just laid to rest on burial grounds. And CNN, Forbes, they've all come out with articles talking about the frustration of building a case, for those who may have been responsible for his death. Why? Because they do not have a cause of death. And so I love it how his name has been thrown out there to justify how this has been a deadly riot. When you look at it, of the five people who died that day, 4 of which were actual protesters, 1 of which was shot by a cop. The others, another one was, I believe, trampled by the crowd. It wasn't like they was beat up, just trampled by the stampede. And then the other 2, another one, I believe, tased themselves to death practically, and another one pushed off the wall by Capitol Police and suffered a heart attack or stroke or whatever. But it was like a 50-foot fall. And so the only real death that they can really attribute to the Capitol riot or insurrection was Officer Brian Sicknick. And the story that was initially told was that he was hit in the head with a fire extinguisher. But this was just word of mouth. But come to find out, medical examiner examining the body saw absolutely no no brute force, no blunt instrument, has no cause of death. there is no proof whatsoever, not a nick on Brian's body, Officer Brian's body, that shows that he was hit with anything, let alone a fire extinguisher. So they have no cause of death. They're thinking that the cause of death may have been related to the tear gas that they, the Capitol Police themselves, tried to throw on to the people to disperse them. That's the only other explanation. So they're going to have to do a toxicology report, but there are no signs of any bruising and or damage to the body. No blunt instrument force to the head, nothing. So I love how people talk about murder, but no one who says that knows the cause of death. They're just thinking of the Black Lives Matter riots that happened all throughout the country for the last 7 to 8 months. And they saw the danger, the injuries that occurred from that. And they're thinking it was much like that, much like how the people who beat up that guy in Dallas who was trying to protect a bar with a sword or a machete, whatever. And they're thinking like that. They're thinking Kyle Rittenhouse. This is a dangerous, violent situation. People getting stomped on and attacked. They're thinking about what they, those on the radical left would do. And that was done to Brian. Nada. No cause of death. None. So was this self-inflicted by the Capitol Police, by the tear gas, bad reaction? I don't know. So got to do another video on that on another day as well, because again, I love how they try to flip the narrative, change the narrative, control it, that this was some violent insurrection, when it seems like the only real violence was from the cops onto the people, but no one got hurt on the other side. There was really no damage at all, unlike the Black Lives Matter protest, which resulted in over 100 federal and state-run buildings being destroyed and or damaged, hundreds of businesses destroyed and or damaged beyond repair, billions of dollars in damages, over 700 cops injured, and at least 25 people dead, as many as 47, numbers somewhere in between, including, again, retired officer David Dorn, but no one wants to really talk about that or try to equate the two. They'll look at this as the worst thing that's happened within the last 10 months and ignore all of the billions of dollars of damages done over the summer. But Black Lives Matter, the 25 to 47 people who were killed, the 700 cops injured, and again, hundreds of federal and state-run buildings, including a police precinct, have been damaged and destroyed beyond belief or beyond repair. And yet this was the only insurrection, and the only federal officer who potentially died may not have even been killed or even attacked by any of the protesters. But that's my video. I just had to comment on AOC's major turn of the story, how a lot of people seem to feel as though they can over-exaggerate something and no one's going to call them out for it. So I'm always going to be another voice counter to the official narrative by the media, call them out. If you like my content, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video, comment on this video, share this video. This is Bruce the Boss Brooks, and I'm out. Peace.